how much money does it take to bribe the Russian soldiers to surrender, defect, give your Russian weapons to Ukraine, and leave the battlefield? If you try to kill the Russian soldiers, they will defend themselves, since their own lives is at stake. But if you give them money and an opportunity to leave the battlefield, they can survive somewhere and return to Russia when all this is over, without getting killed or without killing anyone. It's a win-win situation. The United States alone has already given Ukraine more than $1 billion to fight the war. All that money is more than enough to bribe the entire Russian army and convince them to surrender the weapons to the Ukrainian military. The only thing preventing Russian soldiers to defect is the punishment from the other Russian soldiers. But if the entire Russian army defects, there is no one left to punish the defectors, and it's not necessary for the entire army to defect. If a sufficient number of soldiers defect, the army will become ineffective. And you only need to convince the soldiers to defect. Higher-ranking officers like generals are the minority inside an army. The soldiers constitute the vast majority of an army. It is much easier to convince soldiers to defect since they receive a very low salary. If enough Russian soldiers defect, the war is over. There is no way to wage a war without soldiers. Most Russian soldiers don't want to fight this war. Most of them have no idea why they are in Ukraine. They would be more than willing to accept bribes. They fight simply because they have no other option. They cannot disobey orders because they would be punished, even killed by their superiors. They cannot desert because they would die of hunger and cold. If the Ukrainian army attacks them, they will simply defend themselves and attack back. We have to give the Russian soldiers a way out, convince them to surrender their weapons to the Ukrainian army. In exchange, Ukraine should give them some money, protection, and a way out of the battlefield. The Russian soldiers can then hide in Poland or elsewhere until the war is over. When the war is over, they can safely return to Russia. They cannot return right now because the Russian government would simply send them back to the battlefield. There is no need to talk directly with the Russian soldiers. Putin controls the media only in Russia, not Ukraine. Russian soldiers in Ukraine are monitoring TV, radio, internet, telephone, etc., and they are listening to everything the Ukrainian president is saying. Ukraine needs to announce publicly and openly that Russian defectors will be welcomed. Ukraine needs to announce this everywhere on billboards, TV ads, loudspeakers, internet. Ukraine needs to tell the Russian soldiers that if they defect, they will be welcomed, rewarded, and protected. All they need to do is surrender to the nearest Ukrainian authorities. Russian soldiers should be allowed to surrender with or without a tank. If you impose conditions, they won't be able to surrender, and they probably are not interested in Ukrainian citizenship. Citizenship means nothing to them. Russian defectors should not be treated as prisoners. They should be given some money and be allowed to leave Ukraine as refugees. If they stay in Ukraine, they become targets of the Russian army. They need to flee Ukraine and hide in Poland or some other country until the war is over. When the war is over, they can finally return to their families in Russia. Even if the Russian government goes after them, they can say they were held prisoners all this time and just recently released. When the war is over, the new Russian government will not care. There are always defectors in any war, and there is no way for the Russian army to know who the defectors are. Defectors are simply people who disappear. There is no way to know if they really defected or were killed in combat.